Attachment, caregiver and infant interactions. So for this part of the specification, you need to be aware about how a caregiver and an infant will interact, and in particular the terms reciprocity and interactional synchrony. So we're going to look at those in a little bit more detail. Interactional synchrony. So this is when a baby and the primary caregiver, typically the mother, mirror each other's actions and emotions. They will carry out the same action simultaneously, so they are synchronized. They mirror each other's actions, so smiling at the same time, sticking out a tongue, etc. So this was observed from as little as 2 weeks old, and a key study where they observed and videoed an infant and an adult. So the adult displayed one of 3 facial expressions, so opening the mouth, closing the mouth and sticking out their tongue, and they filmed the child's response. And they found that children did mirror the expressions and actions of the adult. It is important for later development, and research has suggested that high levels of synchrony is linked to better quality of mother and infant attachment, and it forms an important foundation for future developments of future attachments in later life. Reciprocity is where they respond to each other's needs and signals. So it involves paying close attention to each other's verbal signals, non-verbal signals, facial expressions, and it's found from around 3 months old. Reciprocal tends to be frequency, and each person responds to the other and elicits a response, and it's described as more of a dance where one person responds to each other's moves. So instead of mirroring each other's behaviours, they respond. It's a turn-taking process. So if we were to look at an example of a question that you might be given, so this is an example 1 that comes from a specimen paper. What is meant by reciprocity in the context of caregiver-infant interactions? So for 2 marks, so it would be important to do a definition and then a demonstration of how it works. So point evidence, point explain, point expand for your 2 marks. So reciprocity is a 2-way mutual process. Each person responds to the other's signals, paying close attention to verbal and facial expressions. This causes the behaviour to elicit the response from the other. Equally, you could get asked a question that's embedded into a scenario. So, with reference to the conversation above, outline 2 features of the caregiver-infant interaction. So, proud father Abdul was talking to his friend, and both were watching Abdul's wife Tasneem interact with their baby daughter Aisha. It's amazing really, said Abdul. Tasneem smiles, Aisha smiles back, Tasneem moves her head and Aisha moves hers, perfectly in time with each other. Yes, the friend agreed. It's almost as if they are one person. So this is where it's really important to know the wording of the specification. So 2 features of caregiver interaction. Now you know that they are reciprocity and interactional synchrony, so you need to find where there is information in this. So reciprocity is the turn-taking process, the behaviour that elicits the response. So we have that, but where in that scenario is there the turn-taking? So Tasneem smiles and her baby smiles back would be turn-taking, the responding to each other's needs. Interactional synchrony is where they respond in time to the sustained communication. It is the mirroring of that action. So where is their mirroring of their information? So we've got 2 informations that we could use here. Tasneem moves her head and Aisha moves hers, perfectly in time with each other, so they are in sync, they are mirroring. and the friend agreeing they are almost one person, showing that they are perfectly in sync and mirroring each other's actions and emotions and behaviours. So if you're to look at evaluation then, so a disadvantage is quite socially sensitive in the research. So it implies that children are disadvantaged if mothers go back to work particularly early in their lifetime. So they have not had that mother-infant interactions, which puts an awful lot of pressure and stigma to women that might want to go back to work sooner rather than later. Also, it's quite hard to know what is happening. Facial expressions and hand movements are being measured, but we're not really able to understand whether the interactions have a special meaning or not. Just because we know what's going on doesn't mean that we are able to understand whether caregiver interactions and reciprocity and interactional synchrony have any special meaning. It is very useful though, so it had real-world applications, so the development of parent-child interaction therapy, PCIT, and it was found that it improved the interactional synchrony of 20 low-income mothers and their infants in comparison to a control group. So the benefits of doing that, think about how you could extend it further by talking about how the benefits of psychological research, in particular into caregiver interaction, improving the quality of attachments, how that could lead to future developments in later life. However, is it really useful? Because it lacks explanatory power. It just tells us how and why, how the research, how interactional synchrony happens and how reciprocity happens. It doesn't tell us why they take place. It doesn't tell us the meaning and the purpose for the interactions. So it just describes the process. But they are testable, very controlled procedures. They're usually filmed from multiple angles, meaning that they can be analysed later, and it increases the internal validity and the reliability of that. Also, because infants are unaware that they're being observed, they're more likely to act natural, not change their behaviour. So if we look at some evaluation-based questions, we have briefly evaluate research into caregiver interactions for 4 marks. So I would sort of do 1 evaluation point there. Or we could have a 16 marker that is discuss research into caregiver interactions in humans, 16 marks. And remember, discuss is outline and evaluate, so you need to do your 6 marks worth of AO1 and your 10 marks worth of AO3. So 2 sort of main paragraphs on your AO1, so talking about interactional synchrony for 3 marks and reciprocity for 3 marks, and then move on to 3 to 4 evaluation points on caregiver interactions.